Cloud and Clear, the podcast by SADA for innovative business leaders and technology enthusiasts, where we explore how Google Cloud is transforming the industry and what that means to you. Now here's your host, Tony Safoian.
Very excited to have a guest today who's joined us from the great state of Arizona, one of our own clients. Welcome to Cloud and Clear, Heather Sheston.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So excited to have you on. I love the Client Partner Organization and all the amazing work that we do in getting so deep and strategic with our top accounts. In your specific case, it's public sector accounts.
Yep.
And I remember working hand in hand at the state of Arizona. You know, we just loved that experience of someone who was literally known as a Google statewide champion. That was your title, I believe.
It was.
And leading the charge in such a large and complex environment. And then, you know, having the ability to bring you to SADA where you could replicate that at so many other places. So it's been a great union, I would say.
Yeah, definitely agree. It was a great transition for me. Perfect timing. And I've landed in an excellent spot. I'm super excited about that.
Let's talk about the state of Arizona itself, because it stood out in so many ways. Do you want to talk about the project there?
Yeah.
And I know we're still working there. And let's talk about kind of the progress since the initial implementation and what the future and roadmap holds for that state.
Yeah, definitely. So like you said, I was Google statewide champion there. I got to lead our project team and work closely with you guys as our partner to lead us through the G Suite migration. So we focused on mail and calendar. It was a little bit of a lengthy project getting the agencies on board and moving all of that content over. We completed that project last fall. I think it was towards the end of October. And since then, you know, we had such a great executive team, and they've continued to want to focus on utilizing all of G Suite, everything that the state invested in, which is perfect because that is really what SADA does when they come in. It's not just about giving somebody a tool. It's really about making sure that they're implementing that tool. We're working with Arizona to really look at moving them off of, you know, their micro tools, doing an out of office project, getting them fully onto G Suite, doing drive migration. So looking at things like shared network drives and SharePoints and stuff like that, and moving agencies and content over to Drive so that end users can really start to establish that collaboration piece that we love about G Suite. And we're looking at some other stuff, you know, GCP opportunities and projects with audit logs and things like that. So it didn't just stop at mail and calendar, which was the original intent, was to keep moving with the full implementation of G Suite, which is very exciting.
There's an entity being a state, but there's really so many different organizations in terms of agencies of various degrees of complexity and size within the organization. So even though the decision comes down, and it's, you know, sort of a central decision, there's still a lot of selling involved. There's a lot of project work involved. It's like a bunch of organizations within one.
Absolutely.
What are the strategies that you remember, I think, us jointly deploying in a tight partnership to get the other agencies excited and on board with this journey?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think first and foremost, strong executive support. So I would say from the state of Arizona's perspective, we were incredibly lucky to have strong support from the governor's office. You know, that's the very top of any government entity, state government entity. They were definitely on board, very excited about the change, looking forward to what would come from new and improved technology throughout the state. We also had an extremely strong CIO. So he understood what we were going to be doing, what that change would bring to the state, how we needed to bring modern technology into government, which isn't always the case. Government isn't known for new and exciting technologies. They don't always get that. So I think definitely having that strong executive support and understanding about what this change means and why it's so imperative, it is like the number one thing to have, you know?
Yeah.
So we were super lucky. We had a great project team that worked on this. And we also, not just within our head agency, but also within the agencies that we were working with. Like you noted, they're essentially all, you know, small to mid to large businesses. They do different things. They have different content, and their end users work differently. So really being able to partner with them, utilize their expertise, understand what it is that they were doing in-house and what their concerns were before migrating them, was incredibly helpful to all of us. And I think that was incredibly helpful to the SADA team on that side too, to be able to get that interaction with them. Because it's wonderful to have that buy-in from an executive level, but you really need the tech leaders at all of those entities to understand why we're doing this, see what the benefits are, even though, it might be hard to make that change. Like, what is the reason we're doing this, and why will it help us down the road?
Yeah, the top-down support helps, even in any commercial endeavor, when you have the CEO support, the CIO support, the board support, the executive team, it makes those projects go better. But I think what's even more unique about state or any large public sector entity is that, the sub-organizations have their own IT leadership.
Yes. Yep.
They have their P&Ls, they have their charter, they have their mission, then they have their own IT leaders. Who have to be won over. I mean, even if the state decides to go, there could be all sorts of resistance to actual adoption of the technologies or full implementation. So it's really kind of it's a ground game to get on there and express the value and do the work and win them over.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had change management at every level. You're talking executive directors, CIOs, tech leads, all the way down to the end users that are just going to be utilizing the tools.
The reason we wanted you at SADA is because we actually saw you in action doing exactly that, which we think is like the hardest work. It's a combination of like really strong diligence and just enough charm, but like just enough firmness and all those things combined. Yeah, all that stuff. So the timing of this has been interesting because there's two broad trends, and they're now being like tightly aligned. One is a big reinvestment and reemphasis at Google within the Google Cloud organization on public sector.
Absolutely.
If you think about where TK comes from, Oracle, 20% of Oracle's revenue was in public sector. It's when they talk about like the 6 key verticals, public sector is one of those for all of Google Cloud. So we've seen a re-emphasis of that, and whether it's Brent Mitchell who came over from Salesforce or Mike Daniels, they really bring that execution and focus to public sector, and also the field team. Like there was just not enough coverage in the past, I think, prior to 2019 and 2020. So we're seeing that uptick, and then you marry that with a global pandemic.
I know.
It's sort of crazy timing because like we had a playbook, we were running the playbook, and the playbook got thrown out
Yeah, for sure. It's been super interesting. It's very interesting to see it from both sides of the house, commercial and public sector. I think what I've seen a lot in public sector is, those IT leaders really seeing, I think they've dealt with a lot of crisis situations before, right? That happens in public sector, but this was like nothing that anybody could have predicted.
Right.
And I think what we were seeing a lot of in public sector was them not being able to shift from a technology perspective of having their employees in-house on-site every single day to completely shifting to working from home and being able to provide that same level of service for their constituents. And really interesting, constituents, they have this technology every day in their lives, right? They can get anything they want 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they don't know how it works, but they just know that it works. And they have the exact same expectation of government now. So there's really no separation, I think, in technology, which is very unique. I understand that this is commercial side and I understand this is government side. Constituents just want that same level of service all the time. So I think, the pandemic really brought that to light of how government is going to have to adopt and implement these new and modern technologies and able themselves to be responsive to their constituents.
Yeah, I think it definitely created the urgency.
Yeah.
And not, and some of our clients who had, been further down the road or started earlier, for them responding to this work from home order or massive demand for certain systems, like those who had had made progress, them pivoting was actually not that hard.
Right. Yeah.
And the delta between those had and those hadn't started is like
Right.
Grand Canyon size delta and experience and stress and all of those things. But I think it also, for the ones that are existing clients, they saw the value in these platforms before, but boy, was it highlighted.
Yes, absolutely. We heard from them, what a smooth transition it was, how they were able to fully adopt the applications, especially within G Suite, that they had not maybe been fully utilizing before, how much more collaborative they needed to be when they were not in the office, and how G Suite allowed them to do that. Even utilizing Meet for video conferencing. I mean, all of those things that are available within G Suite just helped them pivot on a dime, which was amazing to see. And we even actually had some customers that were sort of in flight with their G Suite, and it was like, we need it now, which was really awesome to see, because they saw, they already knew there was value in it, but they knew that there was even more value if they had it immediately.
So for the ones that had made some investments, it accelerated those investments and also highlighted the value. I think just made them grow more appreciative of what they had, and more curious about what more it could do, right?
Absolutely.
They already had. And then for all those others, I think, we've thrown ourselves into, I think, a couple dozen engagements at least that were coming in a crisis, large states, counties, county associations, cities, to help them stand up part of this environment quickly. Mm-hmm. So for those that hadn't, I think it's creating more of an urgency to transform in a way that they probably plan to do at some point in the future.
Yes.
It felt like they had a long time to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And now they're accelerating those decisions.
Yeah, definitely. I think, again, this just kind of highlighted the need for those tools. And I think, Google having this renewed focus on public sector and getting creative about how they're going to offer these tools to government entities has been incredibly helpful. I would say, having been a customer of SADA's, you guys have always had a large emphasis on public sector. When I was at State of Arizona, you never treated us any different than any of your other customers, which was amazing. So I think it's fantastic to be able to follow suit with Google's renewed focus on that, and know that we're already ready to do this. We're here. We know how to do this in government, working with the folks in SADA that focus on government, and me coming in with that expertise really allows us to help them. Okay, here's where you need to start, and here's where you need to end. I think that's incredible.
There's a couple of other things that have come up kind of front and center in terms of demand. And it has to do precisely with what you said about serving your constituents, kind of how they expect to be served and where they are technologically. And I think, and Chad Johnson recently ran a webinar around contact center AI.
Yeah.
Which is, like massive call volumes, either on the web or on the phone, the ability to increase that customer experience, while taking the load off on the human aspect of responding in a meaningful way to all the inbound interest, whether it's unemployment benefits or other things. You want to talk about contact center AI? Because we're super excited about it.
I know. I was very lucky to be able to do that with him. And I, just to be able to intro this and talk about the contact center AI, we specifically demoed Dialogflow. And he did such a great job. The use case that we had was unemployment, because we're hearing a lot of that, following up on the COVID pandemic, we're seeing a lot of this use case for unemployment. Your constituents are able to call in to this contact center and get information. They can ask basic questions, and that particular CCAI tool will answer those questions for them. And if at any point they get stuck, it will send them over to an actual person. So it's not like they have to continue talking to, the technology. There's another person on the other side. But I think what is extremely helpful, and it's such a great tool for government, there's often lower amount of resources. It's hard to get funding for technology like this. And so I think the super cool thing about that is you're absolutely right. It's definitely high tech for those constituents that need it. It's available in multiple languages, which was like one of our questions. I knew it would be. It's so awesome.
Amazing, yeah.
But I think it really takes, the pressure off of those agencies to be able to allow people to call in, get some of that general information, basic information that they probably hear asked over and over again, help those constituents immediately. And then anybody that's getting stuck can always talk to a real person.
I've seen some of those projects.
Yeah.
And obviously the demos and some projects. It's so exciting because we've talked about AI for a long time in our industry.
Yeah.
And it's been relegated to, kind of like science experiments and things that are interesting and really cool. What's amazing about CCAI and just especially in this application around serving, constituents of public sector customers is that it's the first packaged, commercial, viable, easy to implement, easy to understand artificial intelligence solution.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's so basic without it being basic, but it's basic enough for end users to be able to engage with it. It's super savvy. And there's I went through a whole list of use cases for government. I could have talked all day about the use cases for it. There's just so many. So it's such a cool tool.
And the AI component is, the part that natural language processing, understanding intent of what the customer's saying. And when we see these applications, whether they're demo or production, the people talking are not speaking as if they're talking to a machine. They're just speaking in human terms. They're just with their ums and their pauses and their whatever, innuendos, whatever. It's just it's just phenomenal how the AI picks that up.
Absolutely.
Certainly one of the areas that we know that Google excels in terms of cloud technology, because we experience it on the consumer end with Google Home or Assistant. But it's so much more sophisticated than that because the dialogue flow, the reason it's called flow, it's context aware. It's a continuing conversation. That's not okay, Google over and over again, right? It's a very interesting technology. And I think we saw it demoed at I/O a year or something ago. And we're oh, that's interesting. And now it's landed in a commercially viable way.
Yep.
Customers can buy and deploy within a couple weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm so excited to see it take off in government because, like I said, there's so many use cases. I mean, we did unemployment, but if you're just thinking about the pandemic again, testing centers, all these use cases for government, I cannot wait to see it blow up in that realm.
What's very fulfilling about the space, we have a soft spot in our hearts for the space because doing work with Google for 14 years, a lot of the initial work, we cut our teeth on the technology when it was very nascent, working with higher education, K through 12, public sector. In a lot of ways, these are the early adopters of the technology. And what's great about working in this space is the scale of the impact that we can have.
Yeah.
And often reaching the people most in need.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a very different than a
absolutely
implementation for a Fortune 500 organization. There's deep-rooted meaning in that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I know the executives when they were looking at, going to G Suite for Arizona, one of the biggest and most deciding factors for them was understanding how many people were utilizing this in the education space. So if you're thinking about the talent that is going to be coming in-house at your company, this is what they know. This is what they've been using. Our project team was a perfect example of that. We had 2 interns on board, which we were very lucky to have. But I remember at one point I was asking them, did you guys ever use Microsoft Office? And they're like, no. It blew me away. So first it made me feel really old, but it also blew me away. But I think being able to see them mirror those 2 worlds. And if you're thinking about people in their personal life, a lot of what we were seeing is people used Gmail. They were familiar with these tools on the personal side, which is fantastic because I think the same goes for the constituents that we're helping. They're familiar with these platforms. And so that bridges a little bit of a gap there, which is fantastic.
Yeah, to be able to reach, just tens of thousands, millions of people through this cloud technology that impacts their basic services.
Yep.
in a set of tools that they're familiar with. It's just it's kind of to me, it's like some of the most meaningful work that we do.
Absolutely is.
Not that I love digital natives. I love startups. I love the enterprise. Very exciting work there. But like deploying a county or a state or a city and supporting them through that lifetime journey with Google Clouds, it's super meaningful work. And I know that, we're in several pursuits.
Yep.
What's exciting is to see the continued and increasing demand in states looking at the solution and counties looking at the solution. And with Google's focus, I think we're and the new sales team and the new leadership.
Yeah.
I really feel like it's going to be a very exciting few years. And, even from a commercial standpoint, I know that Google's working on ways to make it easier to buy.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
One of the challenges we've had is it's hard for public sector customers to buy technology that they love sometimes.
Yes.
Because of RFPs and how long that takes. And I think part of the genius is designing commercial vehicles by which they can make these decisions easier and just go to work. It's like a commercial customer would.
Yes, absolutely. I'm super happy to see that too. I think that's definitely a hang up that we run into on the public sector side that we don't run into as much on the commercial side. And I think getting that piece out of the way, allows partners like SADA to really get in there and do the real work, talking about the constituents that we're serving. But also, if you think about the employees that are working at these agencies, I mean, they're doing some of the hardest and I would say least glamorous jobs. And they do it with low tech. They do it without a lot of resources. And I think being able to come in, I mean, when we were deploying in Arizona, sometimes we saw workloads that hadn't been improved or touched in 30 years. 30 years. I mean, are you driving the car? Are you using the same cell phone? No. And so I think this, like, to me, that is really just what gets me, is being able to make improvements in those areas, really help those employees do their jobs more efficiently, give them access to technology that can help them do that, and then allows them to better serve the constituents. And I think all of that just holistically helps the public sector so much, from the sales side of it to the implementation.
Yeah. And look, one thing that's very obvious now is how much of a platform G Suite is.
Right.
And by the way, that ties into the ability to do data analytics at scale with Sheets tying into BigQuery, and how G Suite leads to exploration of GCP, even if you're deeply invested in another cloud or on premise. And I think that's what we're realizing too, and we're seeing in commercial, how those two worlds support one another. If you're G Suite, you're more likely to leverage GCP, and if you're a GCP customer, you're going to look more closely at G Suite as a platform. Right. And one of the things that I'm proud of at SADA is how we've built capabilities around all those product areas.
Yeah.
And you could extend that to Maps, which has really interesting applications in public sector, Chrome, which is like the lowest cost, most secure, endpoint framework if you're on G Suite. Deploying Chrome at scale is the most cost-effective way to give field workers, employees of all types, access to a first-class collaboration environment. Mm-hmm. And I think some of that work around replacing some of these desktop applications is going on at even state of Arizona right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's after we've moved to mail and calendar, what we're really trying to do with those entities is continue their journey. Don't stop there. Really take a look at the rest of those, the G Suite applications or GCP or Maps, whatever the tie-in is, whatever it is that they're doing at those agencies, and really look for ways that Google can help them improve that. Like I said, I mean, honestly, some of these workflows have been around for a really long time, and I don't think it's that people didn't want to make those improvements. I think it was either that they didn't have the resources, or they're often strapped for time and money sometimes too. And so I think getting access to this modern technology such as G Suite, and it's normal, easy to use applications, but the power that they provide and the ability to collaborate and improve workflows is just uncanny. And I think it's so exciting to see them finally taking a look at some of these workflows and making improvements. And it's very personal to me for state of Arizona, obviously, but I'm seeing it with other public sector entities as well. And it is just so cool to hear the use cases and how they're like the cool stuff that they're doing with G Suite. And like you said, maps and, CCAI, all this stuff.
It's a risk. It's a risk for us. It's a risk for Google and our customers if they don't deploy more deeply. Like you're not paying for the full license,
right?
Just to get mail and calendar. I mean,
yep.
Again, thankfully, I guess the upside of the situation is like people have been forced to use the other elements like Docs for collaboration more aggressively, Meet for a real-time communication more aggressively, Chat, of course, the data products. But one of the most underrated features of Sheets is the forms functionality.
Right. I love forms. Literally, I always would tell people at State of Arizona, like hook, line, and sinker with forms. It's such a cool tool, and it wasn't anything that was ever available. And so once people get their hands on it, it's so fun.
You can replace all sorts of applications that work.
I know.
With forms, and like anybody can build one.
I know. And it's
my 9-year-old has built something.
Yes, it's so easy to use. Yeah, it's really, really awesome. And I think that's the kind of stuff, it doesn't have to be a major overhaul. It can be something as simple as utilizing forms to really improve a workflow, make it easier for the constituents, make it easier for the work team. It doesn't have to be complicated or overthought.
Look, the reason that we created the Client Partner Organization, Scott Jetson's organization in which you work, and then added vertical specialists is precisely that objective. Like we feel when a customer decides to buy whatever Google product and deploys, the first phase or the first set of phases, or the first product set, is like, to us, that's the beginning of the journey.
Absolutely.
So staying connected in this unique role that's called the client partner, that's not quota carrying, that's not billable. It's like, we want Heather to be seen as you are in so many customers as like that, just that trusted advisor. Like call Heather about anything. And by the way, Heather has some playbooks, and she would love to deploy them there. Yeah. And we see the happiness level go up, the value proposition go up over time. And again, we're just starting. This team is growing. What I love about the team also, and how we've designed it, is the team aspect. Like it's literally a team with joint goals. So if you do need to tap in, Michael aims for like healthcare help, or Raj or Laura or some of the other people we're bringing on board. Like it's great to be able to tap into some other expertise too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have that on our CPE team, but I mean, really just holistically within SADA, everyone is like that. It's so awesome how everybody jumps in and helps out, and the level of expertise that SADA brings to the table is truly unmatched. And I wouldn't have gone here if I didn't think that. But it's just really cool to see how much SADA can bring to the table. Having so lucky to have to work with you guys, and now to be able to work for you is just amazing.
Don't you feel like this pandemic has brought us closer together?
It really has. Actually, it really has. I mean, I'm gonna have to kick your ass on the fitness challenge, but
oh yeah, we have a contest going on. But even stuff like that, like our executive team has daily stand-ups. I know you're probably meeting with your team and other team members across different groups, probably more than ever. So I always try to look for the silver lining, and who knows what the new normal is, and when it's gonna be established that okay, now we're in the new normal. But all I know is that all the work that you did and your team did in the first several weeks, just to be there to support our customers through this transition. I'm super grateful for that. Thank you for that. And now, since people are kind of, in some sort of a flow, they're really looking at all the other opportunities of changes they don't want to make, they have to make. Yeah. Just being in a position with this amazing partner and everything they bring to the table, being Google, to be able to serve our customers, it's a very fortunate position to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree more.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I love putting out a Cloud and Clear all about public sector, CCAI being a huge focus, but a bunch of other things around G Suite. And I know that we have tons of work ahead, and I think we're going to add a lot of value, make a lot of constituents super happy, and help, honestly, some of the most vulnerable members of our community with all the great projects that we're going to do in public sector.
Definitely agree. I'm very excited about it.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you for listening to Cloud and Clear. Check the show notes for links to this week's topics. And don't forget to connect with us on Twitter @Cloud and Clear and our website, sada.com. Be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app.